In this episode of the Ear Scouts podcast, we're sharing 3 different strategies to help you plan for a roaring good time at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Whether you're traveling with kiddos, looking for a little magic beyond the rides, or just trying to figure out how to ride every single ride in the park, we've got you covered with a hippo-sized heap of tips, tricks, and itineraries. We got a lot of ground to cover, so let's hop to it. Hi ho, everybody. This is Rob with Ear Scouts coming to you from our makeshift studio here in Celebration, Florida. The gang is all here this week. Joining us from the lovely state of Indiana is our resident Disney trivia guru, Craig. Hi ho, Craig.
Hi ho, everybody.
And joining us as always from the state of Connecticut is the host of Jessica Scraps on YouTube, Jessica. Hi ho, Jessica.
Hi ho, everyone.
And with me here in Celebration is the other half of Ear Scouts, Eric. Hi ho, Eric.
Hi ho, everyone.
So as always, Eric will be keeping up with the live chat over on Patreon. If you'd like to join us live as we record each episode and get access to the exclusive Patreon after party, head on over to patreon.com/earscouts. So this episode is a big deal for us because not only is it the start of a new series, we're going to be doing a show like this for all of the parks at Walt Disney World in the weeks ahead, but it's also part of our new focus here at Ear Scouts generally. While we do have a few cruise videos that we're finishing up, the rest of the videos on the main YouTube channel this year will be laser focused on park planning and strategy and tips. So we just finished filming our brand new Lightning Lane guide for 2026 over this past holiday weekend, and I cannot wait to share it with all of you. It's the most comprehensive Lightning Lane video we've ever made, and it's just the start of what we have planned for this year. So we'll be doing all new Lightning Lane videos for each park. We're going to do early entry, transportation, hotel guides, and a whole lot more. So if you haven't already subscribed to our channel on YouTube, this would be a great time to do it. And if you're worried that we won't be doing as many fun one-off videos, have no fear, because those will still be coming to you over on Patreon. So keep an eye out over there for that. But this podcast is part of that new mission to focus on tips and strategy. So let's just jump right into it. We've got 3 different approaches to a day at Animal Kingdom to share with you today. And for each approach, we're not just going to suggest an itinerary. We're going to take you through our thinking so you can understand why we're making the choices that we're making and give you the information you need to build your own perfect day at what I would argue is the best park at Walt Disney World. Jessica, why don't you start us off this week? Because your plan that you've built is focused on creating the perfect day for families with little Ear Scouts in tow. But I think a lot of it is pretty universal too.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I'm going to start off with kind of a few assumptions. And I'm working with a family. And in my family, we're not going to park hop. We're going to only go to Animal Kingdom. We want to all stay together. And what that means is even if you've got some older people that might want to ride some more extensive rides or something, in this day, the whole family is going to hang out together and we're going to really do things that everybody can do. Also, here's the big one. Because we're staying when we're all together and we have the little ones, we're not getting lightning lanes. I don't think lightning lanes are necessary for this group of people. The big thing that I'm going to focus on is the zoo quality of Animal Kingdom. When I think about the best days I've had at Animal Kingdom with my family, and my family has ranged from little ones to adult children to my parents, focusing on the fact that we all love zoos has what made Animal Kingdom our favorite park. So you're going to hear me focus on some of those kind of events and activities in the park, because I think that's really what makes it come alive for little kids. I started with what are my must-dos, the things that I think you must do as a family coming to Animal Kingdom. And Wilderness Explorer is one of the must-dos. I don't know if everyone's familiar with the Wilderness Explorer in Animal Kingdom. I bet everybody on this call is, but let me just explain that it's like an interactive scavenger hunt that anyone can play. So just like Rob said, it's universal. I would say it's kind of geared towards children. They give you a activity sticker book, let's say, that you can then go to different areas of the park. You learn about animals, you learn about the environment, and you get a patch. So it's like from up, you're part of the Wilderness Explorers. Kids love this. Adults who are little kids at heart love this. People that love the movie Up love this. Do not miss out on Wilderness Explorers. And it should be the first thing you do when you walk in the park. There is a Wilderness Explorer kind of station to get you started right on the right before you get to the Tree of Life. My recommendation is you start there. And then as you're walking through the park, as my day progresses, every time you see a station, you're stopping and you're spending time there with the kids. It's a good break from walking. Most of the time they're in some form of a shade. And it's a nice break for the kids to have an activity and hands-on and feel like they're participating in the park. The other two things that I think are must-dos are the Gorilla Falls and the Maharaja Jungle Trek. Those are the two kind of bigger walking trails at Animal Kingdom. This is the most zoo-like you're going to get at Animal Kingdom. And it's even better than a zoo. Almost every animal station has a cast member who is qualified and who knows about the animals that they're represented in that area. The amount of information you get going through these trails, it's kind of mind-blowing how much information you get. The other thing that's in these two trails that I'm betting maybe even some of you on this phone call don't know about is the Play Disney app. This is the unsung hero of Animal Kingdom. Inside both of those trails are separate scavenger hunts. So you actually have additional scavenger hunts, not just the Wilderness Explorer, but each of those trails has photograph scavenger hunts where you take a photo and then it actually, at the end, if you answer all the questions and you get all the AB, is it this or this or this? So you're learning as you're going through the trails. What happens is you can get to take pictures and it overlays different images like the old Snapchat, if you're that age, did, or some of the Disney lenses in the My Disney Experience app. And then you get some souvenirs of walking through the trails. I actually have some of those from some of the trips I've taken, and it's just a lot of fun. So particularly if you have littles, those trails with the Play Disney app are huge. My next must do for the littles or the families is Festival of the Lion King. There are multiple shows, and I know we're going to talk about those later. There's multiple shows at Animal Kingdom. In fact, Animal Kingdom is an underrated park for shows, I think. And I think Rob's going to talk about that later. But for the family, Festival of the Lion King, it has puppets, it has dancing, it has fire, it has knives, it has monkeys, it has gymnastics. There's no child that I've ever taken to that doesn't love it. And I think that's the key. The Festival of the Lion King is something you must do. And then the last of my must-dos is a little bit controversial because I think it's going away. But the affection section is a petting zoo. And in summer of 2026, so if you're listening to this in Tomorrowland in the future, summer of 2026, it's going to have Bluey is going to be over at Rafiki's Planet Watch. And the affection section is going to have Australian animals. It doesn't appear like they may be petable, so they might not be the same thing. But my guess is if you have littles, Bluey is as big of a draw as the affection section. So my must-dos, Wilderness Explorer, Animal Trails, Festival of the Lion King, and affection section. Those are the things that I think you need to do if you have a family. Before I kind of open it up for any comments, I'll just give you what I think is the best day. And I'm going to walk you through, starting in the morning, what do I think is my best day at Animal Kingdom for this group of people? And I'll tell you kind of why. So I don't like to crisscross when I have my kids. Most of the time I had strollers, but if you had children that were stubborn as my children, they didn't want to stay in the stroller, they wanted to walk, or they wanted me to carry them, and you want to minimize your steps. So I'm going to walk into the park. I'm going to get that Wilderness Explorer, that first one, and then I'm going to hightail it to Navi River, because Navi River's journey, although if you have to wait more than 30 minutes, not worth it, for little kids, it is a beautiful, beautiful ride. It's everything that Small World is, but it's better, I think, for kids. The lights, the sounds, the music, just the fact that it's the neon. Kids seem to really be intrigued by that. Even babies. I've watched babies on that ride, and they're just staring at the sounds in the sky. To me, Navi River, if you can do it first thing in the morning and you don't have to wait and you're not worried about rope dropping Flight of Passage because you can't get on it because your kids are too short, that's the way to do it. Also, Pandora is beautiful, and it has what my kids thought was a great breakfast, which is the lumpia, pineapple and cream cheese and an egg roll. I mean, that's a breakfast that you can't avoid. But after you do that, you're going to hightail it over the back way to Safari. So we're just going to go in a big circle. We're going to ride the Safari. And then depending on the time you get off of Safari, you're either going to catch the first showing of Festival of the Lion King, or if you have enough time, you're going to do Gorilla Falls, and then you'll flip-flop those two. And then you'll head over to see the affection section. So you've done all of that in the morning. You've basically spent a good morning where you've seen animals, you've seen a show, you've ridden a really beautiful ride, you've had some breakfast in the Lupia, you've done all of that. And hopefully now it's time for a little bit of lunch. I want to say, if I had to pick one place that my kids loved the most, it was Tusker House. The character meal at Tusker House there with Donald in his safari outfit. I have so many pictures of Donald in his safari outfit with my little kids. It's a great buffet. And I'll tell you why. The parents' food is good too. It has mac and cheese and chicken nuggets and mashed potatoes and pasta, which your children will eat. It also has the best adult food. I have multiple times, this is basically a 5-6 hour day now, ended here. And I'm going to tell you, my kids thought they had the best time at Animal Kingdom. If your kids are still going and you're still going strong and you want to keep going, Feathered Friends, the other trail, Maharaja Jungle Trail, the Tree of Life Animal Trail. I think before you leave, it is imperative that I tell everyone they should go to Zootopia, and they should see Zootopia as the last thing you do before you head out of the park. I think it's a great show. And here's my plug for, unlike It's a Bug's Life, because I would not have put It's a Bug Life on here if I was doing for kids before, because it was scared a lot of kids. Zootopia scares no one. Zootopia is what you want in a little kid's show. I've watched it now 4 times, and the laughter in that room is sheer joy. And there's some bodily humor jokes, and there's some hey bub jokes, and the kids just love it. So Zootopia for kids is great. And that's kind of my day at Animal Kingdom.
I'm going to say that the thing that you mentioned that I just want to kind of piggyback on, the cast members that you encounter on those animal trails. So many people just kind of go on through and don't stop and chat with those cast members, and they are a wealth of information. And I mean, they will get your kids excited about the animals that they're looking at. Like if your kids are just kind of like breezing through it and not really seeming that engaged, try chatting up those cast members, because they also, I think, they know their audience, right? When they're getting those little kids excited about that animal, they're going to provide maybe details that are different than they would provide to me if I asked about that animal. They're really good at kind of bringing you into the world and the experience, and giving you a memorable moment. So I agree with that 1,000%. I'm going to talk about this in mine, but the one thing I would add, that if you've got littles, I think the Finding Nemo show is also another one that you should consider, especially definitely if your kids love the movie Finding Nemo, that's
Mhm.
obviously kind of a no-brainer. But also if your kids are really into just like puppets and things that are very, it's a very vibrant, very, there's a lot of beautiful imagery, and the puppetry is just over the top amazing. But I'll be talking about that in my lineup for the day. Um, Craig, Eric, did either of you have any thoughts or things you wanted to add on to a day with littles and the whole family?
No, actually, I mean, I think Jessica did a great job with that. The only thing I would stress is the Tree of Life. When you're in the queue for Zootopia, just seeing the carvings in the tree itself and getting closer to those. And she also mentioned the Tree of Life trail where you can see some animals as well, and not be in the queue. But the Tree of Life itself, I think, is something you really would want to spend time on with the kids as well.
Eric, did you have anything, or do we have anything coming from our friends watching us live on Patreon?
Yeah, something that this Rob mentioned was don't forget Kids Love Animation Experience at Planet Watch for Kids. That's one of like the first things that we did when we first came for when we went to Animal Kingdom for the first time. And honestly, like you don't have to have a skill to enjoy it. Like if you're not good at drawing, just like following the cast member, it's quite the experience. Unfortunately, it seems that it's going to be gone. Hopefully, it's going to come back at Hollywood Studios.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It it's staying, it's just moving, I think, to Hollywood
to
Studios.
Yeah.
Hollywood
Yeah.
Studios, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But they
uh,
do give the kids crayons too, which I think is great. So if your kids are not able to do the full drawing, you can get a coloring page and they think they're following along and they're coloring. And I I have seen like the artist has signed the kids' coloring page and made them feel like there's some magical moments. So that's a great one, Disless Rob. I think I just didn't mention it because I'm pretty sure it's moving to Hollywood Studios.
Yeah.
and also from Alicia, she mentioned that um, the Animal Kingdom park pin trading is top notch, and we have seen it. Honestly,
Mhm.
like at the Oasis, like all these cast members like line up, and they have very good like pins. You're going to get like a very good opportunity to get like either rare ones or very unique ones. So
My mission for this episode was to come up with the perfect day that wasn't focused on rides. So my focus is on shows and characters and photo pass and animal encounters and all the other things that make Animal Kingdom such a magical place. And I'm not suggesting that you would go to Animal Kingdom and not ride any rides, which is why the first thing I do want to talk about is Lightning Lane. And in case you didn't know, characters are no longer included in Lightning Lane. And that was really, if you weren't into rides, that was probably the biggest bang for your buck with Lightning Lane before, when it was Genie Plus, was getting shorter waits to meet characters. That's not there anymore. Having said that, Lightning Lane is still available for shows and obviously for most rides. But it doesn't really help you a huge amount in most cases with shows. It does allow you to arrive a little bit closer to showtime and not have to worry so much about being able to get a seat. But with most shows, that's not really an issue anyway. It's really just Festival of the Lion King, as Jessica mentioned, and I'll talk about in a little bit. That's one. Zootopia, the new Zootopia show at Animal Kingdom, if you're there on a busy day at a busy time, you could avoid some line with Lightning Lane. But in general, the reason I think Lightning Lane is good for a day like this is it allows you to incorporate some rides into your day, but not dominate your time waiting in those lines, which frees you up to be able to meet characters, which are going to be longer waits, to see the shows that can take a little bit longer to experience because, the shows are a little bit longer, especially Festival of the Lion King and the Nemo show that I mentioned. Also, as Jessica mentioned, Feathered Friends in Flight, that's another one, takes up a fair amount of time. So, using Lightning Lane to be able to still ride some rides, but make time for this day that I'm going to talk about is something you might want to consider. The first thing I recommend you do, even before you come, and then do it again on the day of your visit because these things change a lot. But open up the My Disney Experience app and look at the map. So you're going to tap on that map marker icon that's at the bottom of the screen. And what I recommend doing first before you do anything, just filter it to the park that you're looking at. In this case, Animal Kingdom. There's a little button that looks like some settings there in the upper left. You tap on that and choose Animal Kingdom. And then up at the very, very top, there's some icons for things like uh, I think wait times is the first thing that shows up, but there's also dining, attractions, there's other buttons up there. And the one that I'm going to talk about for this is there's three of them actually. There's characters is up there, entertainment, and photo pass. But I would actually start with photo pass because there's going to be options that are available during early entry, even for folks who don't have access to early entry. Even if you're not staying at a qualifying resort hotel, but you're there early, there are some photo pass opportunities that will show up there that you can do before the park even opens. But the other reason I think you should start with PhotoPass is because you're also going to see characters in that tab. Any character that has a PhotoPass photographer with them will appear in this tab. And what's better about looking at the characters here, if you look at the characters in the character view, it's going to show you all the different times that they're going to come out for the rest of the day. But if you're looking at this at 2 in the afternoon, you wouldn't see the times that they came out earlier in the day. But here's a little trick. If you go into the PhotoPass side, you see the hours of that character interaction because you're seeing all the hours that the PhotoPass station is open for the day. So you can see when that character starts, where you can start getting photos with that character and when it ends. So I actually, for the characters that have PhotoPass photographers with them, I find that to be a better place to look when you're planning your day. Now, once you get into the park and you're there on your day, it's better to look at the character tab because that's going to give you an idea. Number one, what characters are there that day. It does change sometimes from day to day. You know, they might have special characters that appear in there that weren't in there yesterday. So do check that character tab, but start with PhotoPass because I think that can provide you with more information, especially when you're planning. Now, I should also mention that the Adventurers Outpost is another character location where you're going to have one of the longer waits of the day. And that one does not show up in the list of characters with PhotoPass photographers because there is no PhotoPass photographer there, believe it or not. They use like a little automated kiosk thing. But the when you first get to the park, when you're planning out your day, I think early entry is usually the best time if you have access to it to do things that are going to have longer waits later in the day. Unfortunately, characters are not out typically for early entry. So that's going to be your longer waits if you're focused on characters and shows. And unfortunately, you can't do characters during that time. The other thing that you could consider if you're focused on shows and characters before the park opens is the new Zootopia show. That is one of the only shows, I think it is the only show that you can see during early entry. When you look at the app, you can see hours for all the different shows. And there'll be a special little block sometimes that'll say extended hours. And if the attraction is open during early entry, that's where you see those hours. So right now, when I check it, I do see early entry for Zootopia. One last thing I do want to mention about early entry. I said that characters typically are not available during early entry, but we do have a wild card there because Cool Kid Summer is coming back. And I know at least at Magic Kingdom for Cool Kid Summer, there were a lot of characters roaming around for early entry. So if you are character focused, it's possible that this summer there will be some roaming characters there in early entry. And that brings me into rope drop, which is Disney speak for when the park officially opens. If characters and photos are a big part of my plan, that's where I like to start. Number one, you look better in the morning, so you're going to get better quality photos. Also, character and photo pass lines are going to be way shorter in the morning. There are a lot of photo pass spots right there near the entrance and also near the Tree of Life. You've also got Nick and Judy, you've got Doug and Russell, you've got Mickey and Minnie. All of those are there on Discovery Island right when you enter. That's pretty close to the entrance of the park. And those meet and greets typically start right when the park opens. So you can do those right at rope drop. Moana is also near the entrance, but typically she starts meeting just a little bit later. For example, I checked today, she started 30 minutes after park open. But still, if you did one of those others first and you wanted to do a meet and greet with Moana, she's going to be right there as well. You're also going to want to keep an eye out when you're doing these different photo pass opportunities for magic shots. And I actually wanted to toss to Eric.
Adding a little bit about what Rob was asking with the perfect moment or the perfect timing to get your photos taken. I agree. I totally agree with him to do it like first things in the morning. You're going to be looking good, but also the ambience that you have like in the morning, like it's going to be looking way better than later in the afternoon, especially like with the sun. Like if there's people who are very sensitive to the sun, it becomes tougher in the middle of the day.
Yeah, because people squint or blink or like, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Lighting in the morning, once that sun is directly over your head, it is not a pretty picture.
Mm. Yeah.
And speaking of the sun being high in the sky, it's a perfect transition for me to talk about once you get to the middle of the day, some things you should think about during that time frame. And for me, the number one thing is shows, because you're likely to be very grateful for the air conditioning and the chance to rest for a little bit. This is also a great time, though, to explore the animal trails that Jessica spoke about, because most of the characters and attractions are going to have their longest lines of the day at this point. Whereas a trail is something that you can do with no line, right? You can just go and experience that at your own pace. So anything you can do to avoid lines in the middle of the day, I recommend doing. There's one show though that I would recommend avoiding in the middle of the day, and that is Festival of the Lion King. Because unless you have a lightning lane, that one does get a very long line on busy days, and it's possible that you might have to wait in line for the entire show until the next show. And man, is that a terrible waste of time in your day. So I find that with Festival of the Lion King, even on the busiest days, if you go to the first show or the last show, you're always pretty much going to get in. It doesn't usually fill up until very close to showtime for those. So if you want to avoid a long wait for that one, I would do first or last. In terms of must do shows, Lion King is at the top of my list, but the other ones that I love that are good in the middle of the day are The Big Blue and Beyond, which is the Finding Nemo show that I talked about earlier. That is basically between what's left of Dino Land USA and Asia. As I mentioned, the puppets are amazing, and kids, you just look around the theater, little kids are just enchanted by that show. I also highly recommend the Zootopia show, Better Together, which Jessica also recommended. And specifically, if you're a fan of birds, and that's kind of key here. If you love birds, if you've got like bird watchers in your group, Feathered Friends in Flight, which Jessica mentioned, but also Winged Encounters, which is one of those shows. It doesn't take place in a theater. So a lot of folks don't think about Winged Encounters, but it happens right in front of the Tree of Life. You can find it in the app and see when the show times are. That one is just cool because the birds just seem to fly out of nowhere. Like they're just
Mhm.
suddenly they're there and this show happens. And if you're a bird lover, I think those are two must-dos in your day. As far as animal trails go, my personal favorite is the Maharaja Jungle Trek because I think it's the best blend of world building and amazing animals. There's actually a whole backstory. A lot of people don't realize this. To both of the major animal trails, they have a backstory, but the one for Maharaja Jungle Trek is so detailed and cool. Um, the story is that the Maharaja Jungle Trek was once a royal hunting ground for the Maharaja. It was only for the Maharaja himself to go hunting these animals like tigers. And when that Maharaja died in a hunting accident, the the hunting grounds were passed on to his brother, who turned it into a private wildlife preserve. And then when it got handed down to the next Maharaja, that Maharaja decided to open it up to the public and gave it to the people of the village of Anandapur, which is where you are when you're in the Asia section of the park. And you don't need to know that backstory to enjoy it, but as you go through, you're going to see the architecture is just beautiful as you go through there. And there's these huge murals that are of the Maharajas, and they actually tell the story that I just told you. If you know that story and you look at the art, it all comes together, which that's what I love about Imagineering. I love the thought and the detail and the imagination, right? It's Imagineering, the imagination that's put into it. And I think Maharaja Jungle Trek is the perfect example of that in terms of Animal Kingdom and the different animal trails. Now, of course, there's also amazing animals there. You're going to see tigers, Komodo dragons, and some really beautiful, interesting birds. The other must do trail is Gorilla Falls in Africa. But I would say this one is more about the animals than it is the world building. There is a loose storyline about it's a wildlife sanctuary and there's a conservation school happening there, but it's not the same kind of a story that you have on Maharaja Jungle Trek. But there are amazing animals. So you've got gorillas, hippos, meerkats. One of my favorite things to do on that particular trail, if you're lucky, there's this spot where you can see the hippo underwater and there's all these fish. And it's a fact that fish keep hippos' teeth clean. The fish are like the dentist for the hippos. And it's very cool because you can actually sometimes see the hippo will be standing there with his mouth open and the fish will be cleaning his teeth. So I just think that's a very cool thing. That where else are you going to get to see that other than Animal Kingdom? There are two smaller trails that are closer to the entrance. There's the Oasis, which is the first land you come into, and there's actually a bunch of animals there that a lot of people just walk right past. They don't even realize that they're there. And there's also a beautiful waterfall, and there's a really fun suspension bridge that kids love to kind of jump across because the bridge, shakes a little bit. And that's a fun thing that a lot of people I think miss. And then, of course, there's the Tree of Life trails, which is where you're going to find a few animals, but you're also going to find character meet and greets there. I think that's where Russell and Doug are now, if I'm not mistaken. And that's also where you'll get really good views of the Tree of Life, as we mentioned earlier. Now, if seeing animals is your main focus at Animal Kingdom, you're also definitely going to want to do Kilimanjaro safaris. That one is best early in the morning or right before it closes. The reason it's great in the morning is because the light is good, it's not too hot, the animals are usually a little bit more active at that time. But the downside is, unless you're in that line really early, everybody goes early in the morning because everybody knows now that it's the best time. So the line does get really long. However, what a lot of people don't know is that it's also really good right before it's going to close. The lines are usually almost non existent. And then once it's cooling off again, the animals are active again. They're also a lot of times being fed around that time before they go back home to their enclosures for the night. So you'll see them kind of milling about, expecting food or movement. And so that can be a good time to go as well. Um, you should also consider, if your animals are your focus, some of the extra paid tours that are available. Now, these are an extra charge. They're not included with your admission, but some ones you might want to look up in the app just to learn more about them. Caring for Giants, Savor the Savannah, and Wild Africa Trek are a few of the more popular ones. When it comes to lunch, my favorites are Nomad Lounge, Satuli Canteen, and Tusker House. If characters are a big part of your day, Tusker House is your pick. If you're going for more of a quick service meal, my personal favorite is Satuli Canteen in Pandora, because that gives you a good combination of delicious food, but also it's a really beautiful, kind of one of a kind atmosphere. You do feel like you're dining in Pandora, which is cool. And then Nomad is great if you just want to relax with a tropical view. You're kind of there with like a river view and tropical plants, and you've got a cocktail in your hand. If that sounds like the vibe you're looking for lunch, then I would recommend Nomad. Before it gets too late in the day, though, you do need to make your way to Rafiki's Planet Watch and the conservation station because that does close early. Keep that in mind as you're planning. Currently, there's the petting zoo there that we mentioned. There's also some educational spots there. Some of the spots for the Wilderness Explorers program are there. Some of the best ones actually are there. And you've also got there's an animal hospital that's there right now where sometimes you can actually see them uh, helping animals right in front of your like one time we actually saw them doing surgery on a turtle, and it wasn't even a turtle that was like one of their animals that they had in the in their habitat. It was just a Florida turtle that was crossing the road somewhere in Disney World and got hit by a car. But if you're here in the summer, as Jessica mentioned, Bluey is also going to be a very big draw there at Conservation Station. And there's going to be Australian animals, which I can't wait to see a kangaroo at Animal Kingdom. And if you're doing Australian animals, you got to do a kangaroo, right? Got to be one. So I'm excited about that. No matter when you plan to visit Rafiki's Planet Watch, though, you do need to include about 30 minutes each way for transportation because you have to take the train to get there. And if you don't time that train right, you got to wait for the next one to arrive. I 30 minutes, you might not take you that long, but budget that because you might need it if you don't hit it at the right time. Um, Also, I want to throw in here a lot of people think of Animal Kingdom as a half day park, but if you stick around until the evening, you're going to be rewarded with shorter waits because so many people leave in earlier in the afternoon. And if you're lucky enough to be at Animal Kingdom during the time of year where it gets dark early enough, you get to see a series of really cool projection shows that happen on the Tree of Life. And my favorite thing, you get to see Pandora at night, which the Land of Avatar at night is a show in and of itself. It's just beautiful. The plants are all bioluminescent, and there's just all kinds of things that just come to life in that land at night. And just strolling around there is a treat. So even if you're not there at the time of year when it's dark at park close, sometimes if you get in line for Flight of Passage right before the park closes, it takes long enough to get through that line that when you come out, it's dark and you will get to see a glimpse of Pandora at night on your way out. One last thing I'd like to mention is that if photos are a big focus for your day, you might want to consider capture your moment. And this is true in any park. And Eric, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about what capture your moment is?
So it's an extra experience. It is not included in Memory Maker, but you can book a 20-minute sessions with a private photographer that will take you around different areas, depending on the park that you are at. And they will stay with you for those 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes are going to start running when they take the first photo.
What's the ballpark? What is it for a 20-minute session right now? I know that price changes and usually goes up over time, but
Okay, well, it's going to be $99, so it's going to include like up to 7 people.
okay, yeah.
So up to 7 people, like in your party, that will be part of the session. The good thing about Capture Your Moment is the cast members can take you anywhere you would like to. Usually in Animal Kingdom, they don't have photo pass photographers by the animal trails. But again, like if you decide to go by like the tree of life, again, like that will be a unique place to have them, you know. And
Yeah.
the same tip that I will recommend you, like if you don't want people on your photos, always try to book the first ones. That's when also like everyone is ready, everyone is in a good mood, and everyone is ready to roll. So my and again, like the lighting is the lighting is not as bad as later in the day, where you're going to
Yeah.
get your photos where you're squinching.
So, taking all this information into account, I would plan to start, as we discussed, in Discovery Island and the Oasis in the front of the park and cover all those photos, characters, and shows. And then I would choose to move around the park in a counterclockwise direction, starting with whatever's left of Dino Land when you're here. It's possible none of it's going to be left, but maybe some Dino Land is still there. So I would do that and then move into Asia. And the reason I would move in that direction is because most people are starting their day going the other way. Most people start with Pandora and move into Africa. So if you do the opposite of most people, you're going to find shorter waits for whatever it is you want to do, including characters and shows and photos. The one thing that is important, though, when you go in this direction, just keep an eye on the time because you do want to make sure that you're making enough time to get into Africa and visit conservation station if that's something that you want to do. And you should probably make that the first thing you do in Africa if that's on your plan, because again, you don't know how long you're going to spend on the train getting there and back. And it closes pretty much the earliest. You're also going to want to make sure if you want to do Kilimanjaro safaris or the Gorilla Falls Trail, those also close earlier than everything else. So that's another thing. Keep an eye on that time. And as I mentioned, I think the Festival of the Lion King is a must do. So also make sure that you're there in time for that last show. So I would say counterclockwise is best, but just watch the time. And then I would end in Pandora because hopefully you're going to be able to get a glimpse of Pandora at night, which is amazing. And then you're going to end your evening hopefully watching those beautiful projections on the Tree of Life from right there near the entrance where you're come full circle. So that would be how I would approach my day and my reasoning for why I would approach it in that way. Does anybody have any thoughts or suggestions of things that
Mm,
you might want to consider in a non-rides focused day?
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered it very well. One thing I would add, we are talking about the Oasis, the area where you from the entrance to the Discovery Island Tree of Life area. It's lovely. It's this wonderful decompression zone. You're like leaving the world behind you. You're definitely in a different world. But if you're there in the morning and you're there for early entry and or rope drop, you don't waste your time. It's going to be you're going to have to exit the same
Yeah.
way. So, yeah, don't waste time in the morning, but that is something I think is worth checking out at night for sure, or whenever you're exiting.
Did you mention Divine?
Yeah. Divine is another cool
That's
character
another
that
character that
Mhm.
I don't think you
I did
mentioned,
not
but
mention Divine. Yeah.
Divine is in the, usually in the Oasis when you walk in. I thought that was Craig was going to go to is that's the one character that's kind of, and she changes with the seasons, and she sometimes
Hmm.
has flowers, and she's sometimes Christmassy and in fall like, and it's very cool. But it's a I'm going to say stilt walker, but she's a
Hmm.
vine, and
Yeah.
she's in the front of the park. An amazing character and amazing pictures that is really adds to the atmosphere of Animal Kingdom. So if you have a
And
chance and you're,
you have to do Divine early because she
yeah,
does go away. I think
mhm.
she's usually out of there by lunchtime, right?
I don't. I'm a morning person, so I always see her. So I
Hmm.
don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, she's usually there in the mornings, and um, I agree. She's a must do if you want to get some really cool under the radar character photos because a lot of people don't know about Divine, but
Hmm.
Divine's pretty cool. And anything from Patreon or Eric?
So okay, from Taylor, she was asking, in cooler months like December through February, are the animals active all day?
I think yeah, actually I would say I don't feel like it's as much of an issue when it's cooler. So one thing you hear a lot is that if you're there during most of the year, it's hot here. And when it gets hot in the middle of the day, the animals just look for shade and they just kind of chill in that spot. And you won't be able to see them as much. But that I don't think that's as much of an issue. In fact, I feel like you see the animals, especially the ones that immediately come to mind are like the gorillas on Gorilla Falls.
Mhm.
Are I feel like they're much more playful. But if it's too cold, here's the other problem though. If it's too cold, certain animals have to be kept in their habitat, their off stage habitat where it's heated. So that's the only risk. But that's going to be the case whether you're there in the morning or night. In fact, your best chance of seeing them then would be the middle of the day when it's hottest, because that's when they might be able to let them out. Um, but yeah, when it's cool and not cold, I think the animals are pretty active all day for the most part. Craig, you have our final strategy that is based on thrill seekers and those who just want to do every ride in the park. And I'm guessing that's probably what I won't say the majority, but a lot of the people listening to this podcast are probably want to get a lot of rides done. So what are your suggestions to folks who are ride focused and thrill focused?
Hmm. Well, actually, Animal Kingdom is probably going to be the easiest one to answer for this one. So, um, and the main thing about Animal Kingdom and the rides, the big one is Flight of Passage. Now, you have basically three options. If you want to go for early entry, and Rob has some great videos out there about how to get there and make the most of your time during early entry and get in line for that. Um, Another way is the single pass lightning lane, which you have to pay for. And the last way, and Rob kind of alluded to that too, is go at closing. If you get in there right before closing, you're still going to have to wait, but the lines will be shorter and you will get on as long as you're in that line and the ride does not break down before the park closes. So when I was putting this together, I'm assuming you're not using Lightning Lane MultiPass because you really kind of don't need it for this park. And also that you don't have access to early entry. I'm also keeping Dinosaur out of there because we've only got 2 weeks left on that ride anyway. Um, but here's my recommendation. I do highly recommend the single pass for Flight of Passage, if it's in your budget. Um, Otherwise, the closing thing. Again, I'm just assuming you don't have early entry, but if you can go, later in the day, closer to closing. If you don't have early entry, do not go into Flight of Passage early because that's what everyone else is doing. However, a lot of those people who are going to Flight of Passage are going to go to Navi River Journey after that, and not as many people are going to get there for early entry too. So it is a good one to start with and get that out of the way if you don't have the lightning lanes. Um, so after Navi River, I would go up to the Kilimanjaro Safari. Try to get that done earlier in the day as well, for reasons that have already been discussed. The animals are definitely more active. If they're early enough, they're getting fed. That's always a lot of fun too. Um, so around this time, this is when you want to think about Kali River Rapids, which I do recommend. I never used to. I've ridden that maybe a couple times until recently, and I was there with my guy Eric, and he'd never ridden it. And here's the thing about Kali: it does not open normally with the rest of the park. Like right now, it doesn't open till 9. When we were there in June, I don't think it opened till 11. And we just happened to be in that area just as the ride was opening, and no one was there because no one knew about it because no one
Mhm.
paid attention. Um, so that's something you can look on the My Disney Experience app and you can find out what time that ride opens for the day. So try to work that in around this time as well, depending on when that is. Like if it's 9 o'clock, this is when you would do it. So after Kali River Rapids, I would go to Expedition Everest, and this is where I would take advantage of the single rider line. I think we've discussed that in prior podcasts too, where as far as single rider lines, that's one that is kind of a no-brainer. Unless you really have to sit next to somebody that you're with. Um, you're going to get through that line so much faster. The ride is so fast anyway. Um, you're going to have your own personal experience, so I wouldn't worry too much about not being with your group for that. Um, and at this point, we're almost done with all the rides in Animal Kingdom. So this is where you can see some shows, do some characters if that is a part of your day too, what you would like to do. Um, Now, as far as food goes, I think we've picked our top three anyway, which was Tusker House, Satuli Canteen, and Nomad Lounge. So again, this is another thing you want to check about. When does Nomad Lounge open for the day? Usually around 11, sometimes earlier, I guess. But they do not take reservations, but they do have a wait list. As soon as they open, they start taking names down. So you want to be there for that if you want to go to Nomad Lounge, because I can't believe Rob didn't mention the churros
Oh yeah,
as the
churros
main
are
reason to
amazing.
go to Nomad. But yeah, I love that place. The food. If you can get a table outside along the waterway, it's fantastic. I think. Again, one of my favorite places to go. And Satula Canteen is another one. I think you have a lot of great options there that are off the beaten path. And as someone who is low carb now, there's so many more options there. You just get these bowls that you make yourself, or you choose what you want kind of proteins, but you can get it as a salad basically, which is fantastic for people who have dietary restrictions. Um, and then to top off your day, as far as the rides go, you can get in line for Zootopia Better Together at the Tree of Life. Again, lines are not too bad. I mean, they just keep moving. It's not a long show. So yeah, you might have to sit through or be in line for a couple of shows, but it still goes quite quickly. Um, and then go back to your hotel or go somewhere else or park hop. Conversely, you could come in later in the day, but if that's the case, I would kind of reverse it, where you end up in Pandora, kind of like how Rob said. uh, Zig while everyone else is zagging. But again, keep your eye on the wait times, and I think it's pretty easy to get all the rides in at Animal Kingdom right now.
Oh
This is
yeah.
all going to change very soon. Well, not very soon, but once Tropical Americas opens up, it's going to be a different story. But again, now I think it's a great time to visit Animal Kingdom.
Yeah, I think the as you were mentioning, because it's such a short list, it's if rides is your focus, I would say you don't need to sweat it too much, and really think about incorporating some of the things that we talked about in the other two itineraries for this park. That is, uh, it's the luxury of Animal Kingdom right now is you can kind of do it all and still have time in your day for it. And that's not really true of any other park at Disney World. If you wanted to do all the shows and all the rides and meet some characters, this is the only park where you can really feel like you completed everything if you want to do a full day out of it. The one thing I would say, I think the strategy that you put out there is exactly right. I think if you have early entry, it makes great sense to start in Pandora because you have the opportunity to do Flight of Passage with a shorter wait if you're there early enough for early entry, and you can probably get a somewhat short wait on Navi River Journey as well if you hit it right. And at that point, you're in perfect position to move into Kilimanjaro Safaris because that one's not usually open for early entry. So you're essentially rope dropping that attraction. And as you mentioned, you can then possibly hit it where you're rope dropping Cali River Rapids because that one opens later. So I think that's a great strategy, especially for folks with early entry. For me, if I'm getting there later, and this is what you'd said, if you're there even just after park open, I find that my favorite Animal Kingdom days are just going counterclockwise. Just start over in Asia and Dinoland, not just because of wait times, but just because it's so much quieter over there in the morning. And Pandora and Africa are such a zoo, pun intended. And then, when you go around the other way, by the time you're hitting Africa and Pandora, that crowd is on the other side. So I think you're right. It really does depend on the time of day that you're hitting it and whether or not you're using Lightning Lane or um, single pass. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, it's not something in this park you don't need to sweat it too much. You can kind of do what makes sense for your day, and I agree. I think your strategy is a great way to get everything in and still have tons of time to do all the other things you'd want to do.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. Again, this was just a boom, boom, boom. Let's get it done. Let's get all the rides in as quickly as we can and make sure we get them all. But the beauty of Animal Kingdom is in the peaceful moments. It's in the
Mhm.
architecture. It's in some of the queues, like the queue for Kali River Rapids. I had never sat through it. I've only did Fast Pass before that, but we went through the entire line because it was empty, and that queue is just gorgeous.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
also, if you can, if even if it's coming back later in the day, and if you can experience Animal Kingdom at night and you never have, I highly recommend it. It's truly magical. Like almost every park, I would say, is magical at night, but Animal Kingdom is truly something as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I would like to add that some people on in the chat were talking about the different documentaries and on Disney Plus. So uh, I remember like watching them for the first time, and again, I always thought that I have a lot of knowledge about the animals, and then like when we took a chance to watch those shows, it also helped us to understand more about like what's happening in the parks, or like the names of the different animals that they have over there, the things that they are going through, and honestly, like it kind of helped us to appreciate the parks even more. So
Yeah.
I think it was like a very unique experience, just as Rob mentioned earlier today about like how we saw them practicing a surgery of a turtle in Rafiki's Planet Watch. Now I think that place is just magical in different ways.
Mhm.
No, it has very unique things to offer that, as you said, like it's if you want to see it as a zoo, it's a zoo like but a very interactive
Mhm.
and you know that the animals are very well taken care of actually.
And that's, I think, the most important thing to know about Animal Kingdom versus a typical zoo is, I mean, Animal Kingdom brought in Jane Goodall and brought in, you know, experts in not experts in zoos, but experts in, wildlife and in their natural habitats. And their goal was to recreate as close as humanly possible a natural habitat for these animals to live in. And I think one of the first things that Jane Goodall said was, Are you sure that you're prepared to dedicate the amount of space that's going to be required to do that correctly?" And Disney said, "Yes." And that's why Kilimanjaro Safaris, the ride, just that area that you see on the ride is larger than all of Magic Kingdom. It is a
Mhm.
massive space that those animals live in, and that's not something that is typical, at most zoos. There are other zoos that are, but most zoos they just don't have that luxury, and
Mhm.
so I do think that's special. And I thank you for bringing that up. The Magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom is the name of the show. Completely agree. Once you watch that before you come, you do feel connected to the animals on a deeper level because you've seen the struggles that they're going through, and you know their names. And I I just think it's really cool that I can go into the park and I see a gorilla and I know what that gorilla's name is. I mean, it's just, and that's what you get from watching Magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom.
Mhm.
Now it is time for our question of the week. Jessica, I think this week's question is kind of in line with what you were talking about today. Am I right?
It is. This week's question comes from Sons of Stretford 3866 on YouTube. And those sons wrote
Mm.
in to say, "We are going to Animal Kingdom and staying off property. What 3 lightning lanes do you recommend to a family with a 4-year-old when you don't have access to early entry?" So the other thing you don't have if you're staying off property is access to 7 days. You're only going to be able to get your lightning lanes 3 days in advance. And I think that plays a big part into this as well. Um, what I have seen for Animal Kingdom is that Navi River tends to fall later in the day. Um, in this particular scenario. So I actually would go for Zootopia because I think you'll still be able to get it as earlier. Zootopia, Safari, and then I might still do Navi River, knowing you can do single rider for Everest, or if you wanted to get Lightning Lane later in the day for that one, usually it's available. And then I would use, Rob's videos and play the slots, and you might be able to get those moved around either the morning of or after you check in. But right now at Animal Kingdom, there's not a lot of lightning lanes that I think you need. And I think that's a
Yeah.
different story. If you could afford it or you're interested in the single lightning, I think this is what Craig said before. I many times only get Flight of Passage and I don't get lightning lanes for the rest of the park. And that's kind of
Is a
my strategy.
4-year-old old enough to
But
do Flight of
but
Passage?
you could do Flight of Passage for 2 people and
Yeah.
not do the 4-year-old and do Rider Switch.
Yeah.
Is what I would do for Flight of Passage, honestly. Even if you I know this is I think if you've never ridden it, you should do Rider Switch and try to ride Flight of Passage. I think Flight of Passage is 44 inches or 48 inches, so it'd probably be a very tall 4-year-old. But I would do Rider Switch and try to do Flight of Passage. Just me personally. That's my suggestion. What do you guys think?
So I want to say the one thing that jumped out to me in this question is something that I hear a lot of people make the mistake of. And that is that when they read how multipass works, they think that they have 3
Oh
total.
yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's what Sons of Stretford thinks, but it's possible from the wording of this question that they do think that. And so it's important to know you start with 3 lightning lanes, but once you use one of those lightning lanes or it expires or you cancel it, you can book another lightning lane in that slot. So you have the opportunity to book way more than 3 and you can park hop with it. So if you were going somewhere else after Animal Kingdom, you could be booking uh, lots of rides that your 4-year-old would love at Magic Kingdom
Mm-hmm.
or Epcot, but especially Magic Kingdom. So I do want to make sure that you know that you can get more than 3. I would agree with Jessica, though. I think your best 3, I would start by booking Navi River Journey as quickly as you can because it's the toughest to get. And as Jessica mentioned, because you're off property, you're already at a little bit of a disadvantage in that you don't have as much lead time. That's going to be the most difficult lightning lane to get. Right now, Zootopia is also surprisingly difficult to get. So I agree with Jessica. That's another great kid one. And safaris in the morning, especially. If you don't mind doing safaris in the middle of the afternoon, that's not hard to get, but getting it in the morning is harder to get. So I would say, yeah, try to focus on that as your first 3. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I mean, especially when you got a 4-year-old, there's not a whole lot to choose from, really. I will throw like Lion King in there, but that's usually I've never had a trouble like getting that while I was there. But has anyone else?
I'll tell you why I love using a lightning lane for Festival of the Lion King, even though I agree with you, you typically don't need it. I tend to get better seating when I use a
Mhm.
lightning lane, especially if I'm going to come closer to showtime. Um, they This is also true. This is not going to be as true if you have a large party, because if you have a large party, they probably have to move you back towards the back. But if you have a smaller party, even if you come in at the last minute, they have kind of a dedicated section usually for Lightning Lane, and there's usually space to kind of get really good seats even at the last minute if you have a Lightning Lane. Last but certainly not least, it's time for a little segment we like to call Happy Thoughts, because we always like to end each show with something that brought a smile to our faces. Craig, why don't you start us off this week? What is your happy thought?
Okay, so my happy thought this week is I have a new family member. Last
Oh,
week we got a new kitten.
Oh.
Her name is Olive. She's between 8 and 10 months old, according to the vet. She was a stray that my friend Kayla found, so I was able to adopt her. So she's probably under the bed right now. She's very
Mhm.
shy. She's definitely like a smaller runt, and her new sister Pepper is an alpha kitty. So we're keeping them as separated as possible, but I know they're going to become best friends eventually. So yeah.
Well,
And,
I'm
oh,
looking
and one
forward
more
to
thing.
seeing her make an appearance because your
Yes, we
cat.
have seen Pepper. Well, I
Yeah.
was going to mention, I was also privileged to do as a guest on the Dizzless podcast, which is coming out later this week. And Pepper did make her tail, at least made an appearance on that one. So
It's
if
cute.
you want to see Pepper's tail, definitely check out the Dizzless podcast. Regardless, check it out. We talk all about DVC. So if that's interested, we really did a nice, good deep dive into that.
Very nice. Eric, what is your happy thought this week?
So we just went to Festival of the Arts, and um, well, first of all, I'd like to throw that out there that I am a card collector. So the fact that I was able to see the big Lorcana cards display around the park, and also being able to see like the artists that actually created them, like just made me very excited. And when we went to Lumiere's Lounge in Morocco, like I was lucky enough to find a Coda Lorcana card. Yes, I wasn't able to
Mm.
trade it just because I didn't have any with me. But just that just that excitement, of like knowing that there are like people who have like a favorite character, and they are like displaying these little cards, just and having a moment to find them and make you excited for a moment, just made me very happy. So that's mine.
Yeah, the Lorcana card trading is very cool. And what I
Hmm.
loved about it is that it's with pin trading, it's gotten to the point where most of the pins on the boards are fake pins, and it's just it is what it is. And folks trade fake pins and take real pins, but this one is policed. They know, right? They know the values of the different cards. So there's like the section that's
Mm.
common cards, and then the further you go down the board, the more rare the cards are. So you can only trade a rare card for a similarly rare card, or a common card for common card. And I love that that's there too. And I hope that sticks around, maybe that the Lorcana trading becomes part of what happens at Disney World. That would be amazing. Jessica, what is your happy thought this week?
So my happy thought was randomly on Patreon, Lisa gave my scrapbook channel a shout out, and kind of prompted me to re-record or actually record some album flip throughs from my previous Disney trips, because she was wanting to see more of my Disney pages. And I went back and I did the 4-park one day that John and I did back in 2022. And in the very front cover are the documented proof that Ear Scouts and the Diz List back in 2022 were a part of my Disney planning. And I have what I wrote about both of those podcasts in the back of it. And I actually said, this is when I found Ear Scouts. So that's what I
Oh,
actually did. So I don't know how many of you know the first time you listened to Ear Scouts or the first time you listened to Diz List, but I do know, and I have it in my book. And if it wasn't for Lisa saying, hey, I'd like to see more of your Disney albums, I don't know that I would have had that moment. But I appreciate Lisa, calling out my page. And I do love anybody that checks out my scrapbook page. It's great. But I really do remember back in 2022 getting ready for this 4-parks day, and Ear Scouts and Diz List were two of the big podcasts I listened to or YouTube channels I watched. And I say in the video when I record the flip through of the album, they're the two that I still listen to. Of all the ones there, they're the weekly ones that I still watch and listen to. Well, I mean, now I'm here, but I didn't know back in 2022 that this is where I was going to be. So
right.
it's really, really cool. And it was a happy thought. And I had completely forgotten that those inserts were in that album, and it was great. So I know that it was 2022 when I started listening to you guys. So it was great.
Awesome.
That's very cool.
It's pretty
Thank you
sweet.
for sharing that. So, my happy thought this week, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we were filming our new Lightning Lane guide video this past weekend, and it was a holiday weekend. And I got to tell you, the parks were definitely, I was hoping they would be busy because it helps to give people a real sense of Lightning Lane when the parks are busy, but I did not expect it to be as busy as it was. And whenever I make a lightning lane video, I'm always paranoid. I'm like, what if this is the day that all the tricks that I teach people just don't work, right? Like that it's just that it's breaking down and it's not, it doesn't work the way that I tell people it's going to work. And we were trying to book uh Toy Story Mania, and man, oh man, it was impossible. I mean, it was just I could not get this ride at all. And it seemed crazy to me that I couldn't get this tier 2 attraction early in the day. Now, it is a tough to book ride, but I didn't expect it to be that tough that early. And I started to panic a little bit. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like it's happening. My worst fear is
Mhm.
happening." And then we realized Toy Story Mania was basically broken off and on all day. And that's one of the things that we tell people in our videos. We're like, okay, well, make
Mhm.
sure that the ride is functioning, because if it's not functioning, they're not going to release more lightning lanes. It's going to be hard to move on to something else. And that's what we did. We moved on to something else, and then it all worked like it always does. So my happy thought is that even though I was in a panic, uh, it all still works, and we had an amazing day, and I can't wait to share it all with you because it was a really fun day, and we got so much stuff done. So that video is coming soon, but sadly, that's all the happy thoughts we have time for this week. But we will be back next week with a special mini cast episode, because for the first time ever, all four of us are going to be together here at Walt Disney World. And so we're going to attempt to make our first show where we're all together in the same room. And that seems like it would be simple, right? But when you understand how, like, we don't really know much of, we're not audio technicians, figuring out how to make microphones all work in the same room, I don't know. We're a little freaked out about it, but I'm sure it's all going to come together and it's going to be an amazing show. So we'll see you then. And until then, keep thinking happy thoughts, everybody. We'll see you real soon.